So I'm going to start and thank you everyone for coming. We appreciate your attendance, especially on this pretty nice day. For Buffalo at this time, it's actually pretty nice. Um, I do want to tell you that there is a micro-credential in responsible conduct of research. Even if you didn't attend all of them, you can still get it if you want to. There's some work associated with it. And I'll be happy to put my email in the chat. And if you are interested at any time, please feel free to reach out. This is the last workshop in this series, and our scientific communication one has also ended. But I do want to tell you that the videos are available and the slides are available. So if you're looking for any of those, we are happy to provide those to you. And again, my email is going to be in the chats. We do have one more series. It's actually a one and done type series on June 4th, and that is on biomedical informatics, and it is an introduction to it. And it leads to, if you are interested, a free boot camp on biomedical informatics. And Dr. Peter Elkins is going to be presenting that one from 4 to 5:30 on June 4th. I do want to, however, take the time now to introduce Dr. Ramachandra Rao, who is assistant professor in the Department of Ophthalmology at the Jacobs School of Medicine. He presented this last year and people absolutely loved it and have been asking for the videos ever since. So I'm happy to see that he is back with us and he is ready to present again. So I'm going to turn it over to him. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. I'm doing this presentation from India right now, and my local time is 1:30 a.m. But I have had my caffeine, and I'm all set to do this. And I hope you guys are interested and excited to know about conflicts of commitment and conflicts of interest, and how the university recognizes and manages these conflicts of time and financial conflicts. Okay, I do not have any financial or other conflicts of interest that needs to be disclosed. So here is the brief outline of this presentation. We are going to discuss what conflict of interest and what conflict of commitments are, and what is university and JSMBS policies are towards conflicts of interest and conflicts of commitment, how to report financial interests, why to report financial interests, how the university monitors and evaluates these conflicts of interest and commitments, and how conflicts are managed. And we are going to go over some simple case examples, and then we'll leave it for questions. But however, I would like this to be more interactive. So as and when you might have questions that arises in your mind, feel free to stop me and we can have a discussion over those. Alrighty. So the information that I'm going to present in this over the next 45 minutes or so is primarily based on policies laid out by SUNY Buffalo and also Jacobs School of Medicine and Biomedical Sciences. But I have also utilized information that is publicly available from other university resources such as UMesh, Stanford, Northwestern, and other universities. You all might have also taken the COI course on city training. So some of the material in this lecture is also borrowed from the city course. Okay, what is a conflict of commitment? This is primarily related to time. When faculty members or university staff are in pursuit of outside activities, which requires investment of their time that may interfere with their obligation towards the university, it's considered conflict of commitment. Okay, so conflict of commitment is about how you are spending your time, even if it is outside of your quote unquote obligation towards the university. And some of these conflicts of commitment might include consultation roles for private foundations. Um, it can also involve external activity for pay. Again, for example, consulting, book writing, yeah, and this is related to time because in order to discharge these outside duties, you are putting in your time, and the university needs to make sure that this time that you are committing towards this external activity does not interfere with your ability to discharge your primary responsibility towards the university. And it's generally easy to deal with. Conflict of interest, on the other hand, is related to finances, where the university needs to ensure that there is no compromise or even there is no appearance or potential of compromising your objectivity as an independent professional while discharging your primary duties in the university, which is education and research. Obviously, it is extremely important to have an unbiased outlook towards your own activities within the university in order to make sure that you're always disinterested in the research or educational activities that you are performing in the university. And all, please note that this is not just the considerations for actual compromise, but even those activities that might have an appearance or potential of appearing to be compromised. Why is this? This is because as a state university, we are responsible for taxpayer money. We are responsible to taxpayers. We are responsible to the general public. And even appearing to be in a compromising position is not of benefit to the university, right? So the university at any cost wants to avoid obviously actual compromises, but even appearance or potential of compromise. You might all be aware of the saga that is happening out in the world today, where just what might have been conflicts of interest, it leads to people losing their belief in university systems, in science, in research. So it's absolutely essential to make sure at all costs that there is no compromise based on finances or even there is an appearance of potential. Again, a lot of it depends on circumstances. Now, for example, if an employee discloses an external tie and then steps are taken to make sure that any bias or lack of objectivity is removed in decision making or research activity, then the potential for that conflict has been eliminated. Another example would be when an employee accepts a gift from someone outside the university, and then they might simply claim that all the decisions they are making are unbiased. But however, it can still give an appearance of bias, regardless of the claim that the decisions that the faculty or staff is making is unbiased. It creates a potential conflict of interest, and the university needs to be in a position to manage these actual conflicts of interest and also potential conflicts of interest. So why is this important? As I mentioned earlier, the general public invests and places trust in our university. We are a state university, right? So acting in a way that it's obviously important that we act in a way that earns high level of public confidence. And it is obviously central to the mission of the university. One of those actions is to recognize and, where necessary, eliminate or manage potential conflicts of interest and conflicts of commitment such that the trust of the general public remains. So these are the various sources from which again a lot of the material in this talk has been derived from. So what are some of the key principles involved here? All faculty and staff members are to act with honesty and integrity and in the best interest of the university while discharging their duties and to abide by the highest standards. Now, that doesn't mean that the university does not want the faculty or staff to get involved in outside activities, right? In fact, public engagement and fostering research activities with outside private entities is also a part of the university mission. But while doing so, it has to be done in a manner such that all conflicts of interest have been eliminated. So, yes, the university allows and encourages faculty and staff to engage in outside activities and hold relationships that further enhances the mission of the university. But and a lot of the times, such activities, such outside activities, leads to potential conflicts of interest and conflicts of commitment, that is finance and time. And it's almost always inevitable. And the university needs to manage such conflicts of interest and conflicts of commitment. Now, faculty or staff with more than 50% of their appointment um, to the university owe their primary professional commitment to the university. They must commit commensurate time and intellectual energy to support and enhance the university's mission. Other part-time faculty and staff members also owe time and effort commensurate with their appointments. You cannot use your title or your official position to influence or further personal gain or advancement of not just you, but of your family members or personal associates at the expense of UB. And that would be against UB's policy. Okay? The official position and titles that we utilize has to always be in the service of university's mission, but not for personal advancements. So, faculty and staff must disclose all potential conflicts of interest and conflicts of commitment. And as you might already be noticing, this is self-declared, right? It's the faculty and the staff that must self-declare what their potential conflicts may be. And then the appropriate university officials will evaluate what those self-declared conflicts of interest or commitments are and see if there is an actual conflict. And if it is so, they will develop a management plan. When sponsored research or technology transfer is involved, a faculty member should obviously disclose all potential conflicts of interest and conflicts of commitments to the appropriate conflict of interest committee. Okay, but again, notice that it is the faculty or the staff that is primarily responsible for the disclosure, and it is extremely important to disclose all potential conflicts of interest and commitment fully, timely, and to the best of your knowledge. Okay? Except as authorized, faculty and staff may make only incidental use of university resources for purposes unrelated to missions of JSMPS and UP. It includes, but not limited to, facilities, personnel, students, equipment, and confidential information. You cannot delve confidential info or utilize confidential information that let us say you are involved in a research project and you have some novel data that only you have access to, and you cannot use this to further your personal gains in any way, shape, or form. Okay? So it is extremely important to self-disclose the conflicts accurately and completely. Your competing financial interests might involve that of yours and your family's financial interests, relationships with sponsors or vendors. And as we are going through this, we can already imagine various scenarios where your family's financial interests or relationships with sponsors and vendors can lead to bias in your decision making in your own research. Competing financial interest also involves ownership or investment in outside business. Let's say you have stock in Pfizer or pharma companies, and your research, and there's obvious bias then. There could be obvious bias in your discharge of your research because the outcome of your research can, who knows, affect your stock values, right? So your ownership and investments in outside business is can be a competing financial interest. Any employment outside of UB, if you're a part-time faculty or staff, obviously can be a competing financial interest. And uh, in some cases, honoraria or travel support that you may receive from either private foundations or companies might also qualify as competing financial interests. Um, but however, your job as faculty or staff is to simply disclose all potential conflicts of interest accurately and in a timely manner. It's then evaluated if these potential COIs and COCs are evaluated by a designate by the dean. At UB, it's Dr. Mulchand Patel, who's the associate dean for research, who evaluates potential COIs and COCs. And if their actual conflicts of interest and conflicts of commitment has been recognized, then the designate would develop plans to manage those potential conflicts of interest and conflicts of commitment. Sometimes this may also involve other UB individuals, such as the director of the Office of Compliance and also the Conflict of Interest Committee. And ultimately, all of these players are to administer the policy of the university to the Office of Compliance. Is it clear so far? Any questions so far, Catherine?
There are no questions at this time, but please feel free to type them in the chat or you can ask them yourself. Thank you.
All right, thanks. So it's extremely important to make sure that there is no lack of full disclosure if you have any engagement with pharma or industries for clinical investigations, or for example, if there are foreign interferences. Yeah. Okay, what is the procedure for evaluation? Again, I think this slide has been repeated here. You first do all the disclosures on UB Click system. How many of you here have used the UB Click system for maintaining your COIs and COCs? You do this every November. Okay, you get an email from the university saying it's time for your annual disclosures. So UB uses the Click system to manage the conflicts of interest and conflicts of commitment records of all faculty and staff. There's confidentiality in this, and this allows the university to resolve any disputes and also to make sure that all of the conflicts of interest have been all potential conflicts of interest have been declared in a timely manner. and it also allows the university to handle any policy violations, if any. Okay, but always disclose timely, accurately, and fully. The disclosures again happens annually, but in case new conflicts of interest may arise, you have to report those potential conflicts of interest within 30 days. Okay, so yes, you do the annual COI disclosure, but it also needs to be updated as necessary if new conflicts may arise. Okay? And always remember the three key terminologies: timely, accurately, and fully. This is extremely important because this is all self-declared, right? Um, disclosure by investigators of significant financial interest, determination by a responsible official as to whether SFI results in conflicts of interest. So you simply disclose. It is the responsible official who determines if those significant financial interests, potential significant financial interests, actually constitutes for a conflict of interest. And if it does, how to then manage, reduce, or eliminate such conflicts of interest. Okay? So it's institutions' compliance with disclosure obligations. This ensures compliance with PHS policies. So primarily there are two types of conflicts. One is direct conflict, the other is indirect conflict. Now, for direct conflicts, there are standard management plans with oversight or without oversight. And for indirect conflicts, usually there are simple management plans. Now, if there's a direct conflict that has been detected in your disclosures, you might typically receive an email which might look like this. Dear Dr. XYZ, you have stated in your disclosure forms that all of the research sponsors arrangement with you are as described below. You received personal compensation of X amount of dollars from Z company for your activities such as consulting, advisory, or as a speaker within the last year. Furthermore, you also have a significant obligation, time obligation here. Okay, so this is conflict of interest, conflict of commitment, and within the past year, neither you or any members of your family received any other compensation, including it's either this or you might get something like this. So we have determined that you have a conflict of interest for your participation in the study, and this is going to be the management plan. Yeah. And they'll come up with a management plan based on what these personal compensations may look like. So you disclose in writing that you have been paid travel support or consultancy fees for your various interactions by the research sponsor or informed consent forms, and also to all other study teams. Because of your significant interest, be it paid or unpaid, with the sponsor, you'll have to restrict yourself from patient recruitment and final interpretation of the results. Okay? Let other investigators handle these tasks. So typically what might happen is they might change your role as PI on that study, or they might add a monitor to that study who can then ensure that either recruitment or interpretation of the results are being done in an unbiased manner, right? So thereby you have recognized, you have the faculty or staff discloses their potential conflicts, the university makes the determination if there is an actual conflict of interest, and if there is, then there is a management plan, right? There can be a change in PI, there can be an addition of a monitor to that study to ensure that at all costs there is no lack of um, disinterested research. Okay? All of the research that is conducted is unbiased. So you also have to disclose your financial interests in all relevant publications, saying this you have received direct compensation from company X for this research work, or private foundation X or pharma company Y has funded this study. And this has to be disclosed in all relevant publications and presentations of those study results. Okay? And all of those publications and presentations must actually be written by the investigator, not by some ghostwriter by the company. Okay? So then that email would essentially say that please indicate that these terms are acceptable to you, as these steps that that the designate of the dean has taken will allow the management, reduction, and elimination of the conflicts due to your participation in the above mentioned study and the associated conflicts of interest. So if there is any change in the agreed upon conditions, you must notify this office in writing immediately. Okay? In case of indirect conflicts, where let us say someone is serving as a consultant for a company, even if it is unpaid, or serves as a board of director, those those commitments actually serve as indirect conflicts. So you might get an email which might look like this: Dear Dr. XYZ, I'm in the process of reviewing your funded or unfunded project as shown for any possible financial conflict of interest. Your research project or study, as identified below, is funded by company X or sponsor Y. Please review the information and answer the questions listed below. Do you have any overlap with regard to direct or indirect financial conflict of interest between your study supported by this company and your interactions? Do you use any drugs or devices of these entities listed in the disclosure and your financial interest with them? Now, if there is no conflict of interest, you would simply respond saying there is no direct or indirect conflict of interest. But if you have a financial conflict of interest, you would answer yes and provide detailed explanation accordingly. Now, there are actual federally funded grant mechanisms which encourages outside activities between university researchers and small businesses. Okay, one is called the SBIR grant mechanism. The other is called the STTR grant mechanism. One is small business innovation research. The other is small business technology transfer. Now, various federal agencies under congressionally mandated funds provide funding to small businesses to support research and development with the potential of commercialization. Both SBIR and STTR awards are made directly to a small business concern. Okay? Small business constitutes any company that has less than 500 employees. Now, SBIRs are actually grants that can be given out directly to just a small business without the requirement of any collaboration with a research institute such as UB, right? But often these SBIR grants involve a collaboration between the small business and the research institute and the research institute. Let us say you are um, running a lab and you're developing a certain new technology, and there is a small business that has acquired an SBIR grant, which works in a field that is very close to um, what you are researching on. They can subcontract a part of their grant to your lab. Okay, that is allowed under SBIRs. It's not required, but often SBIR grants involves collaboration between small business entity and a research institute. However, the PI in case of an SBIR is in it belongs to the small business entity. Okay, the there is no PI on the research institute. However, STTRs, small business technology transfer grants, often requires that there is necessarily a collaboration between the small business company and a research institute for a certain portion of the award. Okay? In cases where there is a collaboration or subcontract between the SBC and the RI, in case of STTRs, there are two PIs. Okay, this is a two PI grant where there is a PI on the small business side and there is a PI on the research institute. Now, the small business, in case of SBIRs, the small business company must be independently operated. It's obviously a for-profit business with less than 500 employees, and this can include subcontracts to another party, and that another party being the research institute or a research lab within a university. Now, SBC, the small business company, uh, these grants comes in two phases. In phase one, SPCs, the small business company, must perform 2/3 of the research and at least 1/2 of the research during phase two. Okay, which means the 1/3 of research during phase one and half of the research during phase two can be subcontracted out. Okay? And obviously, the PI on the small business entity must be primarily employed by the company itself. Okay? Now, there is no requirement for involvement of a research institute, but however, the small business entity can subcontract these partial efforts during phase one and phase two to a research institute. So the research institute may conduct up to one-third of the research during phase one and perform 1/2 of the research during phase two. Now the PI of the company portion of the research and university portion of the research cannot be the same person. Okay? In fact, most university researchers who would have full-time employment do not have the efforts available to meet the requirements of serving as a company PI. Okay? If you are a full-time employee at the university, you obviously would not be serving as a PI in a small business entity, right? Now, in case of STTRs, small business technology transfer, um, the SBC must obviously be independently operated. It's a for-profit business with less than 500 employees, and there is one PI on the small business entity side, and that PI is primarily employed by the SBC, and in this case, it could be a part-time faculty member who runs a small business, and they could also be a PI, or they could be a full-time employee at the research institute, and that collaborator is required to conduct at least 30% of the research and development, but up to 60% is allowed. But there are two PIs in this case. One is the PI on the small business end and a PI on the research institute. The PI can be primarily employed by either the small business or the research, or sometimes there can be two PIs. Now, there is obviously restrictions for the use of university resources unless there is a special agreement and payments made towards utility of university's resources. Students and postdocs can get involved in such startup activities through SGTR grants. In fact, it would highly benefit their career development. But however, it is extremely important to make sure that there is no conflicts of interest and that the activity does not interfere with their training and or academic progress, and also to ensure that no biased decisions are made in the discharge of those research responsibilities of the faculty member as well as that of the students and postdocs. So, conflicts of interest are very frequent in a community the size of UB. So you should always be alert the risk of acquiring new conflicts of interest as your career progresses. Even a perceived conflict is potentially damaging to the reputation of the university. And it's just as damaging as any real conflict. Okay? So it's always important to err on the side of caution. It's better to over disclose than under disclose. And again, it's the faculty and staff members who are completely responsible for timely and complete self-disclosure. Okay. Now we are going to go over a few case studies here, and that would conclude this lecture. So, question 1. Dr. XY serves on the board of directors of a non-profit foundation, and she is unpaid for her services. Okay. Dr. XY receives a grant support for development of educational activities for the foundation. Now, should Dr. XY list her involvement with the foundation on her annual disclosure? Would you require a management plan for her grant activities? If so, why? So, anybody can volunteer to answer these questions.
I would say that she probably should list her involvement because I feel like it could still serve as a little bit of a conflict of interest.
Yes, this is conflict of interest, and also she would be providing her services in the form of time. So this is also a conflict of commitment. So Dr. XY should obviously list her involvement with the foundation as a board of directors on her annual disclosure. Now, would this requirement require a management plan for her grant activities? Now she's serving as a board director for this nonprofit, and this nonprofit is also providing some grant funding to Dr. XY to develop educational activities for the foundation. So it would only require a simple management plan to ensure there could be just a monitor, okay, to ensure that whatever educational activities that are being developed through this grant support, the methodology that is employed and the outcomes of those research activities are unbiased and disinterested. It would only require a simple management plan in this case. Okay, let's see another case study. A clinical faculty investigator at a medical school is also employed as a part-time member at a freestanding research institute. Okay, so now this clinical faculty member is essentially has two part-time appointments, right? One at the medical school, one at a freestanding research institute. Now, a pharma company has developed an agreement as payments for service with that freestanding research institute to make presentations on company's behalf. Now, this member, this clinical faculty or investigator at the institute makes presentations in programs sponsored by this pharma company. Okay. Institute receives payments from the pharma company as per an agreement, and the participating member was then paid extra compensation for their participation by the institute. Now, should the participating member disclose his or her payments as paid service by the pharma company? If so, why? How about Lucas? Lucas Koto. Anybody can step in. Just
Sorry, I typed it in chat.
Okay, yes, since he was paid extra for participating. Also, I'm seeing Lucas's response of yes ensures proper records of payments as well as participation. Thanks, Lucas.
yes. So yes, the participating member should disclose their payments as paid service. Yes, it is indirect in that it's the pharma company that is paying the freestanding institute, and the freestanding institute then pays the clinical faculty or investigator. But at the end of the day, there is a clear chain of payment and it goes back to the pharma company. So obviously, it's a conflict of interest and it has to be disclosed. Okay. A university faculty member, Dr. AB, and his colleagues jointly formed a company to develop a software to collect patient-based information for evaluation. A SBIR grant was awarded to this company, and a subcontract was given to Dr. AB, who employed his son for a period of 3 months to perform data collections from the charts. Okay. So let me read this question again. A university faculty member and his colleague jointly formed a company. Okay. Now this company developed a software to collect patient-based information. Now an SBIR grant was awarded to this company, and a subcontract was given to Dr. AB, who then goes on to employ his son for a period of 3 months to perform data collections. Now, was it appropriate for Dr. AB to employ his son on the subcontract?
No, due to personal conflict of interest, paving way for a family member, and the company was formed by Dr. AB and his colleague. He should consider talking with his colleague. And then another person says, no, not appropriate.
Yes, it's not appropriate, and it's also against UB's policies. You cannot hire family members into such subcontracts. Okay? So yes, it was not appropriate for Dr. AB to employ his son on the subcontract. But however, would it be all right to employ his son on the SBIR parent grant to perform this task?
Lucas, are you responding to the second question or the first question in the chat?
The second question. This is the second question.
Lucas. Thank you. Lucas says no, it implements bias and uneven judgment for consideration from the perspective of the colleague.
Actually, the son can be employed on the parent grant because a company can hire anyone, right? Now, when Dr. AB employs the son on the subcontract is on the university's end, right? So that is not appropriate. But for a company, he can be hired by the small business. Okay. And if it is based on merit, if the son happens to be a software engineer, let's say, okay, and has the necessary skill sets, then a private standing company, a small business, is within its rights to hire um, Dr. AB's son as an employee. Okay, but Dr. AB cannot directly hire the son through a subcontract on the university side. Okay, is this clear? But however, then Dr. AB would have to disclose that their son works for company X or Y or Z, right? Which happens to be founded by himself. He just cannot employ his son on the subcontract on the university side. Okay? Okay. The last of the questions here. A new company has just been formed and 5 university employees either have board positions and or hold equity. Now, would you create a separate COI management for each employee? Or would you create just one plan and name all the university employees who are affiliated with it? Why?
We have people saying separates. We have people saying, hold on a second, I have to just scroll up. I would make a separate plan because each employee could have their own COIs for other matters. And then separate would be ideal since every employee might have individual COIs.
That is right. Every individual has their own situation and their own set of conflicts. So yes, you need to create separate COI management plan for each employee. Okay. A single plan, it's not a one size fits all issue. Okay. Because each has different positions. One might have a board position, one might simply hold equity, right? So each case needs to be evaluated individually by the dean's designate and needs to come up with 5 different management plans for the 5 university employees. Okay. All right. With that, I would be happy to take any questions or comments, and I would like to thank you all for your participation.
Okay, we have a question. How is the
Yes.
amount of research, like 2/3 of 1/2 of research, to be performed by SBC determined?
So these are usually written in the grant stage itself as to what constitutes the front end and the back end of the research. Now, it's obviously how research is such a malleable thing. How do you know how much effort goes into what? Because there are unexpected maybe tasks or troubleshoots that may come up. But typically, this 2/3 or 1/2 is based on the efforts that the researcher declares. Right? Now in phase 1, if the SBC is doing 2/3, then the researcher from the research institute, the faculty or the staff, can only commit what is 1/3, somewhere roughly about 3/8, right? Or 2/8, up to 2/8, up to 3/8 of effort in phase 1 and 4/8 of effort in phase 2. Okay, so it's about how much effort you claim. You claim your effort in eighths. There are 8 parts to your effort, and if you can only claim 1/3, then that would roughly be about 3/8 of an effort. Okay, 2/8 to 3/8 of an effort in phase 1, and 4/8 of effort during phase 2. It's what you put down on the paper.
Great, Tanvi, is that understandable? Yep, thanks. Excellent. Any other questions? you don't have any questions, you feel free to sign off. Thank you very much for attending. Dr. Ramachandra Rao, we're getting a lot of thank yous, and we thank you especially for being up this late from India for doing this presentation. If you could possibly just send me the PowerPoint, I can send it out to everyone tomorrow when I send out the survey. So anyone who attended, you're going to receive the PowerPoint if you wish to do so. I think that's all we have. Anybody else have any questions? Please stay on. If not, feel free to sign off. Thank you very much for
Thank you
attending
all.
the series.